Since their presidential pardon, Todd and Julie Chrisley of Chrisley Knows Best fame have been sharing quite a few stories with fans. Recently, Julie shared a serious health update with fans. During the conversation, her husband, Todd, also shared that she was going to see a specialist. Todd and Julie Chrisley were introduced to fans through the USA Network series, Chrisley Knows Best. However, in 2022, the two were convicted of a variety of charges, including bank fraud and tax evasion. The couple was originally sentenced to spend a combined sentence of 19 years behind bars. However, the two were released back in May thanks to a presidential pardon from President Donald Trump. Recently, the two have been sharing updates with fans about their lives, complete with the return of their podcast series, Chrisley Confessions 2.0. During the July 30th episode, Julie shared a shocking health update with fans. Julie claimed that she developed problems with her lungs due to prison conditions during her stay in prison, which lasted around 28 months. Todd started off the discussion by sharing the story of an inmate who suffered a lung health issue after being made to clean asbestos and black mold. According to Todd, this was done without a respirator. Julie shared she believed this story, noting, "I'm sure because, listen, I have a lung condition from being in prison. Not from doing those things, but because of asbestos." For his part, Todd added, "Because of the black mold that you were around." During their time behind bars, Todd and Julie were in different states. Julie originally reported to the Federal Medical Center, Lexington, which is in Kentucky. Todd, on the other hand, reported to the Federal Prison Camp, Pensacola, which is in Florida. Julie noted that she was currently dealing with respiratory issues, saying she was having issues catching her breath. Todd noted, "That's something that we're having to address right now. This week, you have a doctor's appointment with a pulmonary specialist that's going to do some tests on you." According to People, the Federal Bureau of Prisons did not want to comment on the conditions of confinement for previously or currently incarcerated individuals. However, they released the following statement to the publication. "It is the mission of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, BOP, to operate facilities that are safe, secure, and humane. We take seriously our duty to protect the individuals entrusted in our custody, as well as maintaining the safety of our employees and the community. Humane treatment of the men and women in our custody is a top priority." Did you see this recent episode of Chrisley Confessions 2.0? Make sure you come back to TV shows Ace for all the latest reality TV and celebrity news. The morning light filtered through the gauze curtains of the examination room, soft and sterile. Julie Chrisley sat still in the corner chair, her hands folded in her lap, clutching the edges of the paper gown like a woman trying to hold her dignity together with the thinnest thread. There had been signs, nothing dramatic at first. A wheeze when she laughed too hard. A flutter of tightness after climbing the stairs. Then came the coughing, dry and persistent, like a stubborn memory that wouldn't leave. She had brushed it off, attributing it to the changes in weather, to stress, to getting older. She was no stranger to stress. But stress didn't make the air feel heavier each week. It didn't make the world tilt with each breath. She had delayed this appointment for months, as if procrastination could undo biology. Yet here she was, the sound of her name echoing in sterile hallways just moments ago, summoning her toward answers she wasn't sure she wanted. The pulmonary specialist's office smelled of disinfectant and old books. A quiet screen on the far wall displayed rotating lungs in brilliant 3D renderings, each lobe, each airway, each darkened spot highlighted with clinical precision. It reminded her of a map, one she hadn't learned to read until now. Dr. Vinton entered quietly, reviewing a clipboard with furrowed concentration. He was the kind of man who didn't waste time with pleasantries but wasn't unkind. He moved with efficiency, the way one does when they're used to delivering hard news softened by 1,000 rehearsals. Julie watched his face carefully. Doctors wore masks even without the paper and elastic. She searched for the tremble at the corner of his mouth, the flick of his brow, anything that betrayed what he was about to say. The scan results were laid out on the screen now. Her lungs glowed in icy hues, not the whole lungs, Just fragments, marbled and shadowed in all the wrong places. Scar tissue. Fibrosis. Words she had only ever encountered in brochures she threw away in waiting rooms. A simple diagnosis might have been easier to accept. But this wasn't simple. Idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. A degenerative condition with no known cause and no known cure. Julie listened, or rather, absorbed, the explanation like a sponge soaking up ink. There were treatment options, experimental therapies, lifestyle modifications, but all of them led in one direction: management, not healing. The disease would run its course. The pace might be slow, but the direction was irrevocable. Her throat felt dry, too dry, but not from emotion, from the condition itself. It was already beginning to etch itself into her daily life like frost carving patterns on glass. Leaving the office, she moved like a woman underwater, walking not through air, but through the weight of what she now carried. She reached her car and sat behind the wheel for several minutes, unmoving. The diagnosis had pressed itself into her skin like ink from a newspaper, staining everything it touched. Back home, the familiar chaos of life waited like a play already in motion. Emails, calls, obligations. The show, as always, must go on. But this time, the stage felt unstable. Her breath was shorter today, or maybe she just noticed it more. Every inhale was an effort disguised in grace, every exhale tinged with a new kind of fear. Julie began researching late into the night. Medical journals, forums, survivor blogs. Some stories inspired hope. People living years beyond their prognosis. Others unraveled into sorrow, the way lungs do when they stiffen into silence. She read until her eyes blurred, trying to balance knowledge and denial like twin weights in her hands. The hardest part wasn't the fear of death. She had come to terms with mortality in her own way over the years. No, what haunted her was the prospect of becoming a burden, of needing others in ways that would erode her pride, of not being able to take a walk without a portable oxygen tank, of her world shrinking to the size of a living room. The next appointment brought tests, spirometry, imaging, arterial blood gases. She sat with a breathing mask strapped to her face, puffing and exhaling on command, while machines charted her decline in real time. She felt like a student failing an exam she hadn't studied for. Afterward, she wandered the hospital corridors, trying to orient herself. In one hallway, she passed a child in a wheelchair with tubes and IV poles, smiling as he held a stuffed animal. He didn't know what he was missing. She invited him. Julie began to make changes, subtle at first. She adjusted her diet, simplified her schedule, delegated responsibilities she used to shoulder alone. She enrolled in a pulmonary rehab program, exercising carefully beneath watchful eyes. There was a humility in it, a forced surrender to something invisible yet omnipresent. She stopped wearing heels. They made breathing harder, even if only by a fraction. Flats became her quiet rebellion against vanity. And yet, she never let the illness define her completely. She still wore her makeup, still smiled through interviews, still took her daughter shopping even when every aisle felt like a mile. Family noticed the difference, but she downplayed it. The truth was unwelcome at dinner tables. She learned how to conceal the pauses in her speech where breath was supposed to be, how to laugh without coughing, how to cry silently in the shower where no one could hear her fight for air. Each night, she lay in bed counting the seconds between breaths, tracking her own body like an internal metronome. The ceiling above became a kind of confessional, the silence between her and the world a prayer for more time. Not infinite, just enough. As the seasons changed, so did the disease. The specialist adjusted her medication, began talks about long-term planning, clinical trials. Her oxygen levels dipped more frequently, leaving her dizzy after simple tasks. Some days she barely moved, wrapped in blankets with her phone turned face down. And yet, she endured. Julie took walks during golden hour, when the light was soft and forgiving. She journaled more, often about nothing. The scent of cut grass, the feeling of linen sheets, the color of hydrangeas after a storm. These were the moments she clung to, not the looming statistics or the sterile words of specialists. Occasionally, she allowed herself to imagine the worst: hospital beds, morphine, machines to keep her breathing. But she refused to live in that image. It was only one possible version of the future, and she still believed in detours. The last visit to Dr. Vinton came with a surprise. Her progression had slowed, not reversed, but plateaued. A rare and fragile reprieve. It wasn't a cure, but it was time. Time to travel, time to write, time to be present. She left the office that day without a backward glance, standing a little taller. Her lungs still betrayed her, but her spirit had found its rhythm. She no longer chased the air. She moved with it, however unsteady the dance.